Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. On today's episode, we'll hear from Variety's Mark Malkin, who chatted with Zendaya on the red carpet for the premiere of A24's latest, The Drama. Variety reporter Jack Dunn details one of his cult favorite digital series, On Cinema at the Cinema, and he explains why it's had such a long run with Gen Z cinephiles. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. MS Now has shaken up its programming lineup. Anchor Ali Velshi takes over the 11th hour, the network's final show of every night. Anchor Stephanie Rule will move into a new 9 to 11 a.m. slot. There are a few more changes. My colleague Brian Steinberg has the scoop. Viewership for the Oscar telecast came in a little light this year. 17.9 million viewers on linear, down 9% from last year. That's not a great sign. ABC gets 2 more Oscar ceremonies, including the 100th anniversary ceremony, until the rights shift to YouTube in 2029. California has handed out nearly $300 million in production tax incentives to HBO Max's The Pitt, HBO's I Love LA and Rooster, as well as other non-HBO programs. The incentive effort has been expanded to include animated series and reality competition shows. Disney's Family Guy spinoff Stewie took advantage of that. Harry and Meghan and Netflix, unhappily ever after? My colleague Matt Donnelly has a deep dive into what went south for the expat royals in their programming partnership with Netflix. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. And now it's time for conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. Mark Malkin had a great conversation with Zendaya at the premiere of her latest film, A24's The Drama. Zendaya dressed for the event with intention and purpose, as she explains to Mark.
Thanks, Cynthia. I was on the red carpet last night at the premiere of Zendaya and Robert Pattinson's new crazy of a ride romantic thriller, or maybe it's a comedy, The Drama. The two play a couple about to get married when things begin to unravel after the bride, played by Zendaya, reveals a dark secret to her husband-to-be, played by Pattinson, and their 2 best friends. Zendaya stunned at the premiere in the same vintage Vivienne Westwood wedding dress she wore to the Oscars in 2015. I gotta ask about the dress. 2015 Oscars. Is it the same one?
It is.
What made you wear the same dress from the 2015 Oscar?
I was trying to, brainstorming with Law about how I would theme dress for this film, and I kind of remembered the saying, something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. So this is my something old. So I thought I'd bring it back and give it a new life, and it meant so much to me, this dress. I think, it was such an important moment for myself, for my community, for my loved ones, and yeah, I just, it felt right. And it also happens to be a wedding dress. So that works.
Zendaya also teased what's to come on the much-anticipated 3rd season of Euphoria. Euphoria, what have you seen? What should we expect?
I've seen a little bit, but it was a whirlwind. I usually did what I do in 8 months in like 4 months.
Whoa.
So I just was like, it's like trying to get 8 episodes at once. So it just like flew by me, but I'm excited. I hope it turns out beautifully.
For more of my interview with Zendaya plus Robert Pattinson talking Dune Part 3, check out my column just for Variety at Variety.com. You can also watch it all on Variety's social channels.
And now we turn to Jack Dunn, a Variety reporter with a big appetite for movies. He wrote an appreciation of On Cinema at the Cinema, a long-running but mostly under-the-radar digital series that lovingly spoofs movie review shows on TV and other Hollywood conventions. But before we get to that, here's a snippet of the show that gives you a flavor of the humor. This stars Tim Heidecker and Greg Turkington talking in their usual banter format about movies. This is a clip from early on in the show's run in 2011. And that's followed by my conversation with Jack.
How you doing? My name is Tim Heidecker. I'm the host of On Cinema at the Cinema. I'm here with Greg Turkington, one of the guests on the show.
Hey guys, good to be here.
And, let's take a look at some of our favorite moments from On Cinema at the Cinema. Hi everybody, my name is Tim Heidecker. You're watching On Cinema at the Cinema, the webisodes that talk about what movies are coming out this weekend and hopefully give you some advice as whether or not you should see these movies coming up. Some of these movies you should skip because they're junk.
John Goodman should be renamed John Greatman after this because he's Oscar worthy.
Kind of reminds me of Russell Crowe, speaking of the other movie we talked about earlier. Skyfall's getting 4 bags of popcorn from me, and Lincoln is getting 6 bags with 2 sodas.
Well, I thought it only went up to 5, so.
I'm giving it 6 bags of popcorns and 6 cans of
Well, the
soda.
scale only goes up to 5, but I'll give it 5 bags of popcorn.
6 bags of popcorn.
I'm gonna have to say 5 is the highest. That's, at least for me, that's the highest you can give. And maybe a little toy pistol filled with some soft drink or something. Maybe a can of Red Bull. But I'm gonna throw in a roll of Lincoln pennies. A big Hobbit hug.
All right.
If you had those little crackers that are wrapped in seaweed. 5 microwave bags of popcorn.
There you go.
And a cotton candy.
All right, so let's move on.
And a candy bar. All right. But I'm throwing in an extra tub of popcorn for Mr. John Goodman, who deserves a meal after his great acting.
Jack Dunn, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's a pleasure. As an avid listener, I'm thrilled to be here with you today, Cynthia.
You wrote a love letter to a show that you have liked for a long time, a digital show called On Cinema. You got so into it with the 2 main creators, you could see your affection for the show. Jack, just tell us, for the uninitiated, tell us what is On Cinema and why does it have such a strong cult fandom?
When it first launched as a podcast, almost 15 years now. You know, it was funny when I was talking to Mark Prutch, who What We Do in the Shadow star, who is a supporting cast member on the show. He said to me jokingly, you know, it's hard to describe what On Cinema is without sounding a little bit like a moron. And I was like, that was something I was running into when I was writing my story. But yeah, but you know, On Cinema is this sprawling comedic soap opera. And basically it is this low budget Siskel and Ebert knockoff show that, you know, hiding underneath all that is this sprawling narrative about these 2 guys who are essentially just these egomaniac psychos who are trying to establish themselves in the industry and just failing over and over and over and over to make any sort of headway in that pursuit. The places it goes are really astonishing. You know, it really goes to some dark places and some silly places. It's like the craziest live theater experience. You know, it's really something you almost have to watch just to even understand what it is.
Well, that is very true because I read your story and it was very intriguing, but I still didn't have quite the sense. I pulled up a couple of episodes, Tim Heidecker and Greg Turkington On Cinema, and as you explained to me, those are in fact the real actors' names, but they are playing characters.
Yeah, when they started the show as a podcast in 2011, it was just like a side project. They were recording a movie called The Comedy together, and this is kind of where they started to bond as collaborators. They just recorded the podcast, kind of this parody of talking head cinema podcast, people who know nothing about movies. And they're like, oh, we'll just use our real names because this is just for fun. This is just something we'll just put out in the world. But obviously now that it has gotten to this huge enterprise, that creates a little confusion, you know. But another thing about On Cinema that's kind of the key is that it operates around the idea that these are real people operating in our world.
So obviously they've been around a long time, but they are now heading out onto a new frontier with a live tour. That was the spark for your story?
And they're coming to LA in April, which I'm super excited for. But yeah, they're taking the show on the road.
When they come next month to the Wilshire Ibel Theater, can you close your eyes and see the crowd? Do you think it will be a lot of 20-something film buffs? Do you have a sense of who the fandom is?
I think the fandom is a lot of people my age, a lot of like 20 to 30-year-olds who are into film, like you said, and kind of can appreciate the nuance of the storytelling and also the takedowns of Hollywood traditions.
And of course, Tim Heidecker has a long history in the Adult Swim world. What is it about the way he approaches the world that appeals to you? As I understand, you were a Tim and Eric show fan for a long time, too.
Yeah, huge fan. And that was my entry point into On Cinema. It's this irreverence, it's this explosivity, it's this like spontaneity. It's drawing from places that you wouldn't necessarily think were funny, but then they kind of come out in this absurd way, and it can't help but make you laugh. It's just one of those things. I told Greg and Tim, it was like when I watched Monty Python, The Holy Grail for the first time when I was really young. It was just one of those gut feelings that was like, somebody out there thinks the exact same things I think are funny, like are funny. It's like a warm, comforting feeling. It was on YouTube for season 11, and then 2019, Adult Swim shut down its digital production arm kind of around COVID. And now On Cinema is housed on its own streaming platform, which you can check out at highnetwork.com. High Network, HEI, just the first couple letters of Tim Heidecker's name. And it's not just On Cinema. They got all sorts of stuff on there. They got short films. They got these investigative pieces. They have this spin-off action spy show called Decker, which I wasn't able to cover in the story just because it's so much, and it's all in universe. All these projects that they do are all in character. They also have like a short film called Deck of Cards, which they did, which is based on the best-selling deck, just a playing card deck. They developed IP, and that IP was playing cards. So you can check out all that stuff. HighNetwork.com.
Tim Heidecker and Greg Turkington, budding media moguls for the social media generation. Before I let you go, as a film buff that yourself, I'm curious, Jack, how many times would you say you go to the movies a month?
I'm probably watching at least 20 movies a month. I probably go to the theater at least 3 to 5 times a month.
That is what this country needs to bring the movie business back to that fabled 2019 level. Jack, thank you for writing this great story. It's always good when you can marry your job with your pop culture passions, and you can definitely get a lot of that here at Variety.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Appreciate it.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. The Series Mania Festival begins on Friday in Lille, France. It's evolved into a big European showcase for content. This year, the festival has added a buyer's upfront event for March 23rd. Should be interesting to see what comes out of it. My colleagues Elsa Kaslasi, Elise Schaefer, and others will be on the ground at Series Mania. We'll produce the first of 5 digital dailies out of the event starting on Friday. Don't skip Variety's review of Apple TV's latest drama series, Imperfect Women, starring Elizabeth Moss, Kerry Washington, and Kate Mara. My colleague Aramide Tinubu calls it utterly compelling. The first 2 episodes drop today. And it's time to send formal congratulations to Josh D'Amaro. He officially starts his tenure as Disney CEO on Thursday, March 19th. We love to hear from our listeners, so please send thoughts, gripes, and other feedback about Daily Variety to podcasts@variety.com. Before we go, congrats to Ariana Ozanto and Jeffrey Bennett. They've both been promoted at SAG-AFTRA. Ozanto has been named Chief Operating Officer for the Performers Union that represents more than 160,000 members. She will also continue as SAG-AFTRA's Chief Financial Officer. Bennett has advanced to the newly created role of Chief Legal Officer. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Mark Malkin and Jack Dunn. Stick, snicks, hick, picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety.